Hey Design Thinkers, how you doing? This is just a little quick catch-up video to really give you some feedback on the first assignment. So just after I release this video, I'm going to release all of the assignments to you so you will get my feedback. I've given all of you a little bit more feedback than you'll probably expect to see going forward, basically in recognition of this being, for most of you at least, your very first MBA assignment. And part of negotiating the strategy of MBA is making sure that you really understand what's required of the assessment tasks. And I'll admit this one was a little bit confusing in a way. You were asked to draw on material that you had done outside of class, as well as the discussions we've had when we've been meeting online and the reading material. So there's a lot to get your head around. Overall, I was pretty happy with these for a first assignment. Basically, there is nobody who submitted who failed. We've got a couple of people who didn't submit, unfortunately, but nobody who submitted has failed. We have a handful of credits, and we even have one distinction. So most people got a pass, and the average mark overall was sitting at, in the mid-50s, which I'm pretty pleased about, to be perfectly frank. I've had a look at them all to see what some common themes were, and I thought I'd share those with you because I think you'll know very quickly if you fell into one of these criteria. So firstly, a lot of you did some really, really great research. Research tended to fall into two categories. There were people who had done a great deal of research about demographic information, how banking works in Vietnam, comparing banking in other parts of Asia, what's happening with cardless, cash, or electronic transactions in the banking sector, a range of really interesting general information. And then there was also a lot of really good ethnographic design thinking research, research that involved interviews. A couple of people interviewed more than 20 people. There was so deep interview work, some empathy mapping work, some journey mapping work. Where the issue was is there were very few people who did a bit of both. Now that was particularly disappointing for those students who did a lot of traditional third-party research. Many of those are clearly good researchers and drawing on skills that they've got from their undergraduate degree or their work. But the specific requirements of this assignment really required you to do the ethnographic research and to really focus in on what that meant and what you learned. You really needed to do a little bit of both because the traditional research skills were the things that were going to help you identify who the stakeholders in this particular wicked problem are, to be able to look at the data outputs about what's already measured about the problem and to think about the kind of assumptions that underlie the problem. So again, just doing the ethnographic research only got you so far as well. Another key theme, which is not unsurprising in a group comprising mainly English as a second language group, is that many of you need to work on your written language. A couple of themes I saw here. Some people didn't really follow the essay format, despite the instructions to do so. Gave me a lot of information in bullet points, and ultimately you really need to make sure that you're writing in the appropriate format. That will change from task to task, but this time it was clearly an essay format. Other changes or other things that I'd like to see attention paid to is things like grammar, spelling, word choice, word order, and tenses. Now, there are a lot of online tools that you can use to help you proofread your work. There are some really basic things you can do too. If you got your document on your phone, get Siri or Cortana or Alexa or whoever it is to read it to you. We use a different part of our brain when we're listening, and you will notice things that are out of order. One of the great things about very few people getting better than a credit in the writing area is that that's actually pretty easy to fix. References too are easy to fix. To be fair, I've been quite kind in relation to referencing. I wasn't at all concerned about any academic issues there. But it is important to get used to using the proper referencing technique. It's not enough to just give me a list of references at the end. You need to do the in-text referencing as well. The way I like to think about it is that if you are citing a fact or an opinion that somebody else other than you has, then it should be linked to a reference. So if you're talking about a number, percentage, the population, a dollar figure, you should cite where that came from. And we need the in-text reference as well as the source. The other tricky things with references and what you need to do in order to get the best marks possible in that criteria, if it sits as a criteria for grading, is you need to think about the quality of the references that you cite. Some random website is not nearly as credible as a peer-reviewed academic paper or a publication of data from a government, from a World Bank, from a respected research organization. Now, one of the things I saw there is most of you, when you did cite, you did have really good quality references. So that is a good thing, but always try and get the best quality that you can. Going into the actual depth of the paper itself, another theme that I saw is many of you had some really interesting insights, but it was difficult for me to see how you arrived at them. And this is a balancing act, which you will get more used to over time. You don't need to tell me everything, but essentially you need to tell me what's important so that your reader can draw a line between where you start and where you end up. Particularly those of you who have really exciting and interesting insights around the ways that people think about money or differences between what they say about the way they use cash and what they do with the actual cash. But it's not enough to just end up there. On that note, most of you were presenting the design brief and criteria that you'd worked on in groups, but very few of you gave me any information about how you ended up at that design criteria. And that was particularly important for a number of you because there was a real gap between the kind of research you'd done and the insights you noticed and then what you'd negotiated as a group to explain to me. But as I said, overall, I think the groups had some really interesting insights. There were no design briefs that seriously worried me, though there are certainly a number that could be significantly more focused and draw more on design thinking skills. I'm pretty happy with the way that the group went overall. You'll see, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of feedback in many of your papers. Most of you, there's a couple where I was able to do it online, but I was traveling, so I had a couple of issues. But most of you, what I've done is I've uploaded a copy of your assignment as a PDF in the comments, and you'll see my handwritten comments all over it. For most of those, there's a rubric attached as well, and I've circled and made notes in that, unless I've been able to give you direct rubric feedback, which really just depended on where I was when I was doing the grading. But overall, I think it should be clear my handwriting's reasonably tidy, but if you can't understand what I'm saying or what I mean, or if you would like to get some further clarification, please just send me an email and we'll make a time. Otherwise, next time we have a class, I will be ready, willing and able to really push with you to get into the ideation process, or the testing process, I should say, and really help you refine your ideas and work out what it is that you're finally going to pitch. Can't wait, and I'll see you then.